Hi, I'm C-Tom, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through creating a life path for your Cyberpunk Red character. If you've gotten to this video and somehow don't already know, Cyberpunk Red is a tabletop role-playing game set in the dark future of 2045, where everyone has like computers in their brains and shit, and you can just like get more muscles stitched to your body, but also everything sucks, everyone has guns, and you mostly eat like sanitized dog food, and it's really fun. In the last video, I went over all the other aspects of creating a character for Cyberpunk Red, including choosing your role, your stats, your skills, and your gear. In that video, I said we'd be skipping the step for rolling the life path because I felt like it deserved its own video. This is that video. Rolling your life path is a way of randomizing your character's background, determining events and relationships that occurred before you took control of them at the table. Randomizing your character's background, for me, is a super fun part of character creation because it lets me discover who the character is rather than having to make it all up and finding myself falling back on a lot of the same ideas that I would normally use. While rolling your life path, randomizing your background, has been a part of Cyberpunk for a long time, we have seen it bleed over into other games, getting picked up in things like Xanathar's Guide to Monsters for Dungeons & Dragons, which has its own set of random tables for determining parts of your character's background. However, the Cyberpunk one is a little more involved, less so in Red than it is in the past, but it can still be pretty daunting when you look and see 10 tables that you have to roll on with 10 options each, and then separate tables for your class's background. So I wanted to make this video to walk you through it, show how it works, and then show how I use it to generate a less generic and more fun background for my character that I can play off of and explore. For this video, I'll be rolling the life path for the character I created in the last video, Snake Eyes the Solo. Now, normally you would roll your life path before you choose your stats and skills, just in case there's something in there that gives you some special inspiration for how you want to build the character, or some extra skill you want to pick up or not pick up based on events that happened in your past. However, I skipped rolling the life path in the previous video for simplicity's sake, so I'm going to go back and do that now so that I have that character fleshed out in case I ever want to use him for something. Our life path begins on page 45 of the core rulebook with rolling a cultural origin. We'll be rolling a D10 on all of these tables. I've rolled a 2 for Snake Eyes cultural origin, which is Central America. Looking at the language list, I see Creole, and I'm inspired to say that Snake Eyes is from Belize and take Belizean Creole as my native language. Now, your native language, you will get a free 4 skill points in, so I'm going to go ahead and go back and mark that on page 1 of my character sheet, but I'm not going to show that here. After we've chosen our cultural origin, we move on to page 46 where we roll a general personality for our character. You don't have to take this too seriously, and in fact, with all of these options, if there's one that you particularly want or particularly don't want, you don't have to take it. These are guidelines at best, but it really can be a fun way to discover your character, and I recommend just rolling with it and seeing what you get. So I've rolled for my personality, and I've rolled a 1 for shy and secretive. Now this is where rolling your stats or choosing your stats and skills prior to doing your life path can be a little weird, as I've given Snake Eyes an 8 in cool, the highest stat I'm allowed to start with, and now I've rolled that I'm shy and secretive. I think we can still work with this, and maybe I'll play him as some kind of quiet, mysterious but dashing type, or something equally cringy. Moving on, we go to page 47 where we get our clothing style, our hairstyle, and what is called an affectation, or just some quirk of your style. So This time I've rolled a 1 for my personal style, which gives me generic chic. Kind of boring. I'll take it though. I've rolled a 4 for my hair, which is wild and all over. Not how I envision Snake Eyes, but I'll still take it because it'll be fun to work with and reimagine my vision of my character to fit these roles. But again, you don't have to. For my affectation, I rolled a 9, which is fingerless gloves. Yeah, it's a weird one, and honestly, it's the one I roll every single time. I don't know why. The fingerless gloves just haunt all of my Cyberpunk characters. Maybe it's a sign. Our next step is on page 48, where we roll for our values and how we feel about people in general. For my values, I've rolled a 2, which is honor. Honor is maybe a little generic for a solo, but we'll figure out how to make it work as we keep going. For how I feel about people, I've rolled a 10, which is people are great. So I'm a shy person who's really cool and loves people. It's going to take some thinking for this one. Mark those down. Stay on this page though as we roll for things we cherish and our most valuable possession. In this case, I've rolled a 4 for the thing that I cherish, which is a friend. We'll come back to that because that may matter that we rolled that here. And for my most valuable possession, I've rolled a 7, which is a musical instrument. Again, this is a place where if I had rolled my life path before I chose my skills, it would have had an impact because I could have taken points in playing an instrument. Now, of course, because I'm still making the character, I could go back and make a change, but maybe we'll figure out something for the story where the musical instrument is something he's always meant to learn and it represents the things in life he's never done but always wanted to, or something, again, equally cringy. Moving on to page 49, we roll for our family background. In my case, I've rolled a 7. I was the urban homeless. Move on to page 50, which is our childhood environment and our family crisis. In Cyberpunk, almost no one who is a punk had a happy childhood. In fact, probably almost no one in general had a happy childhood. So first we'll roll for our environment. I got a 6, which means that I grew up in the heart of the combat zone. This makes being homeless maybe make a little more sense, as it says I maybe lived in a wrecked building or some kind of squat. Okay, so somehow we ended up homeless and we had to go live in the combat zone where we just kind of lived in ruins, probably hiding from gangs and other dangers most of my childhood. This is starting to make a little more sense. I go ahead and roll for my family crisis and I get a 1. Your family lost everything when it was betrayed. Okay. This also could explain why we are from Belize but end up in a combat zone homeless. I'll have to flesh this out more later. Once I've marked all that down on my character sheet, I move on to page 51, where I'll roll to see how many friends I have in my past and what kind of friends they were. I rolled a 3 for the number of friends that I get. Now we subtract 7 from that number, meaning I get 0. You only get any friends at all on an 8, 9, or 10, 8 being 1 friend, 9 being 2, and 10 being 3. I roll a 3, which means I get none. However, this is where we can pick and choose if we want. And because I rolled that my most cherished person was a friend, I'm going to go ahead and just say I get at least 1 friend and roll to see who that friend is. In this case, I rolled a 2 for my relationship with that friend, meaning that they're like a younger sibling to me. We'll have to think more on this and how that impacts our character even better than friends. Next, we get to roll for enemies. I roll to see how many enemies I get, and I roll an 8. 8 minus 7 is 1. Just like with friends, we subtract 7, but I still get 1 enemy here. I'll roll to see how I know this enemy, what caused us to become enemies, what resources they have that they can throw at me, and what I'll do to get revenge for our rivalry. So first I roll to see how I know them. I get a 2. They're an ex-lover. Interesting. Next I roll to see what caused our rivalry, and I find that we're business rivals with a 9. Okay, ex-lover business rivals. Maybe there's something here. I'll see what they can throw at me. I roll a 7. That means that they can throw the local cops at me? Okay, so somehow they have connections to the police while being my business rival and ex-lover. This is weird, but I think I like it. Finally, I go to the next page, page 52, to see what I'll do for revenge, and I roll a 5, which says I'll backstab indirectly. So much for valuing honor. I'm going to keep it though, because maybe this person just gets so under my skin that I do give up my values when they're around. I'm going to mark all of that down on my character sheet and move on to page 52 and roll to see if I have any tragic lovers. Now, I rolled a 6 for the number after subtracting 7, just like with friends and enemies. That means that I don't get any tragic lovers. That said, I'm going to call my enemy a tragic lover. I'm not going to roll again on the tragic lover table, but I feel it counts. With that all marked down on our character sheet, I do want to mention that for all of these people that we've created as we roll our background, our family, our friends, our ex-lovers, we can create their names and their personalities and everything, or we can work with the GM to have him work them into the story, or just leave them as part of our mysterious allure as a shy, cool people lover. Moving on to the last part of the basic life path on page 52, we're going to roll for our overall life goal. I've rolled an 8 here, which is that I want to save someone from my past. I think this ties in nice with a couple of the things that I've rolled so far, whether it's my cherished friend who I see as a younger sibling, maybe they're in some kind of trouble and I want to ultimately get them out of it, or my family was betrayed, maybe they're still having issues because of that and I need to save one of them. I'm leaning for the friend, but we'll see. Okay, I've marked down all of the basic life path on our character sheet. The last step is to generate our role-specific life path. On page 53, it lists the locations of all of the role-specific life paths in the book. In our case, solo is on page 55. So we go to page 55 and we see there's a couple of smaller tables unique to the solo that'll give us some extra little bits of spice for our background based on our chosen role. So we see that all of the tables on the solo page are a D6 table, and the first thing we have to roll is what kind of solo are we? I get a 5, which means that I'm a local vigilante for hire. Okay, that maybe can work out well with what we've got in mind. Next, I'll roll for my moral compass, and I get a 2, which says that I always spare the innocent. Okay, that ties in a little better with the local vigilante idea. I like it. Next, I'll roll for my territory, the place that I operate out of. And I get another 2, the combat zones. Well, this is making even more sense. Being a vigilante in the combat zones where I grew up homeless. Okay, I can see all the pieces coming together here. The last thing I need to roll is who's gunning for me. And I get a 6, which means that a rival solo is after me. That's an interesting one, and I think we're going to be able to do a lot of work with this. I mark all that down on my character sheet, and that's it. My life path is done. I've done all the rolling. So now that we've finished rolling our life path, we're at what I think is the funnest part. which is where we go back and review it and figure out how it all ties together. So the last thing that I rolled was that a rival solo is gunning for me. I'm pretty happy about this because it ties together a lot of the elements that I was having trouble with as I was rolling through my life path. So I rolled that I have an enemy who is an ex-lover and business rival. This was so weird to me, given that Snake Eyes is this homeless vigilante, or he's not still homeless, but this vigilante who grew up homeless in the combat zone. I didn't really understand how he'd ever even have a business interest, much less a business rival. But if a rival solo is gunning for me, this really ties in well, because I could say that my ex-lover was another solo I used to work with until something went wrong. Maybe involving my inability to harm innocents and a job she has the law to throw at me. Maybe we were on a job for the NCPD and I couldn't go through with it, and she did, and we haven't spoken since, but she's out to get me for it or something. It doesn't have to be perfect right away. I'm just looking at the pieces and trying to see how they all fit together. Like I hinted at before, my goal is to save someone from my past. Maybe that is my friend who I look at like a younger sibling, or maybe it's that lover. Maybe I think she's on the wrong path with the NCPD and all the corruption, and I hope that one day she'll see the light. She won't. That's not how people work. But maybe that's my goal and I'll never fulfill it. Who knows? The point is that this life path gives you a really interesting framework to flesh out a background for a character that maybe you wouldn't have thought of entirely on your own. Especially if you're someone like me, I really have a problem coming up with characters that I find interesting to imagine myself being when I have to do it completely from scratch. This life path tool gives me an interesting way to develop a background where I have pieces I can pull from to start to develop a thread to inform how my character acts, why he acts that way, and just roleplay better. I don't really like saying better, but I mean, if you're having more fun and doing more in character, and everyone else at the table is having more fun because you're doing more in character, well, you're role playing better. So use the life path as a tool to explore what your character can be. I hope you have as much fun with it as I do, and I hope this video is an effective guide for walking you through each of the steps you need to generate your life path. I'd love to hear about your experience with life paths in Cyberpunk, if it's ever led you to create a character background that you wouldn't have thought of on your own, or just helped you create a really interesting character that you had a lot of fun role playing. Or if you find these random backgrounds really bad and you don't use them, I'd love to hear about that too, and what you do instead, and how you come up with characters that are fun and interesting to roleplay, because it really is something that I often struggle with when I'm playing role-playing games. In the meantime, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and keep an eye out for more videos coming about Cyberpunk, about all kinds of tabletop RPGs. I love talking about this shit, and I hope you enjoy hearing me talk about this shit, because if not, it's going to be really awkward putting all of these videos up on the internet for everyone to see.